Hello ladies and gentlemen, my name is Mediocre and since I'm pushing 30, I'm part of the generation that still thinks the original Oblivion is the best game ever made. No one saw it coming, but this 90-year-old game has been remastered, and if Bethesda can make insane amounts of money with old ideas, then dollars be damned, so will I. The game opens up with a speech by Patrick Stewart, who plays the role of Tamriel's emperor, Uriel Septim. He warns us with his sexy voice that the world faces mortal dangers from the gates of Oblivion. He has this knowledge because he is plagued with visions in the form of dreams.
Behold, in darkness, a doom sweeps the land.
Then, a smooth-ass transition reveals the Imperial City, the crown jewel of Cyrodiil, right in the center of Tamriel. This is where our adventure begins. We then pan over to a shoddier district, which houses the prison. Here, the player character is kept for unknown reasons. All we know about them is that they can shapeshift into ungodly creatures. The character is a vessel for the player, and they can be whatever race you want them to be. This becomes important too, as the dark elf in front of our cell has a racist tirade based on the race you pick. The last time I played this game, I masqueraded as a cat who was a martial artist. Since we're doing a remastered version, I thought it fitting to follow the story through the eyes of a new persona. His name? Paul Goodman. Quick on his feet and with his words, Paul is universally well liked, not because of his personality, but because of his proficiency in illusion magic. You'll love me until I decide otherwise. This middle-aged Imperial wishes to do well, but can't resist the temptations of the fast life. He became well versed in laws and legislation after learning how profitable it can be.
Do you happen to know what the fine is here in Cyrodiil for Just asking.
And that's how Paul got his first client as a lawyer.
Your Honor, how was my client to know he was dead? It's not like he told her.
Checkmate, liberal.
Oh, Mr. Goodman!
This stunt is exactly what landed him in prison. Then, Uriel Septim himself walks into the cell, revealing some juicy information.
Let me see your face. You are the one from my dreams. I have gay dreams. Behold, my seed in your face.
Uriel Septim and his entourage are actually in the middle of an escape plan, as his sons have been assassinated by the mythic Dawn cult, and they are on their way to end the Septim plotline entirely. Since Uriel has some cheeky dreams about Paul, they decide to trust him to tag along, earning him his freedom in the process. Before long, the Emperor senses his death approaching and goes as Shakespearean as one does when they first notice their hairline receding.
I go to my grave. A tongue shriller than all the music calls me. You shall follow me yet for a while. Then we must part.
Before they part, the Emperor gives the Amulet of Kings to Paul and instructs him to bring it to Joffrey, as he knows where Uriel's secret son can be found. With death looming, the Emperor has one final request.
Find him and close shut the jaws of Oblivion.
Then, Paul witnesses the assassination of Uriel Septim, which animation is done a lot better in the remaster. All known live-in heirs of the Emperor have been slain, and now the Emperor himself too. So his bodyguard comes in like, "What happened?" And Paul is like, "I don't know, I didn't see nothing." Paul Goodman was now a free man, but he didn't know what to make of everything he had heard. It was almost like death was fucking with him for a change. Determined to keep his promise to the Emperor, Paul sets off to Wayne Priory to find Joffrey, the Grand Master of the Blades. The organization's sole focus is the protection of the Emperor. Joffrey tells Paul that Uriel absolutely f***ed back in the day, and that he sired a bastard by the name of Martin, a priest who lives in Kavach. Before we set out, Joffrey offers us supplies for the road, so the plan is simple. Travel to Kavach, collect Martin, and have him be the new emperor. Instead, hell had come to Kavach, as the city was besieged by otherworldly monsters known as Daedra. who came here via Oblivion gates. You see, way back when, Tamriel was ruled by Daedra, who abused and enslaved people just trying to make a life for themselves. So the gods got wind of this and they were like, y'all, slavery low-key kinda bad. And in response, they awarded Saint Alicia with the Amulet of Kings. This amulet is supposed to keep the dragonfires lit, so long as the dragonfires were burning and an heir of the dragon blood possessed the Amulet of Kings, a powerful barrier between Oblivion and Tamriel would be in effect. Since the Mythic Dawn cult is busy giving the Emperor's bloodline the Birmingham treatment, the dragonfires are starting to wane, making it possible for Oblivion gates to open on Tamriel. This is bad. So bad in fact that the Kvatch city guard refuses to let Paul into the city. With no other options, Paul volunteers to enter the portal to find a way to shut it down. Not being known for his prowess in combat, Paul elects to summon a team of paralegals to do his dirty work and distract his enemies. While traversing the depths of hell, Paul found that they only have one source of power that keeps the whole area lit, a so-called sigil stone. Removing it also removes the portal. Now it's safe to talk to Martin, who has been extremely yassified in the remaster, but he's still being played by Sean Bean.
Danger, you say? You came here to tell me this.
I'm Sean Bean, I'm always in danger. Martin, who has lived as a farmer, student and priest all his life, gets told he actually has noble blood and the gods have a greater plan in store for him. While reluctant at first, he's fast to answer the hero's call and absolutely destroys anyone who dares to get in his way. He basically speedruns the Henry of Skelet's arc. With Kvatch and runes, the head of the guard asks Paul to check on the Count. If he's still alive, then there might be some hope of rebuilding. He isn't.
Where is the Count's ring? Do you have it?
Nah, I don't think so. Leaving a ruined Kvatch behind, Paul and Martin return to Waynham Priory, but they find it attacked by the Mythic Dawn.
I don't know. I think they're right behind me.
Martin, Joffrey and Paul group up, defending the local populace from the attack. Joffrey surmises that the goal of this assault was for the Mythic Dawn to steal the Amulet of Kings, which he had stored for safekeeping. Unfortunately, it was stolen. The Mythic Dawn now has the Amulet of Kings. The only thing that stands between Tamriel and total destruction is the mere existence of Martin. In a way, Uriel Septim's libido has saved us all. Since no place is truly safe, Joffrey insists that we take Martin to Cloud Ruler Temple. On the way there, Paul's horse was turned into a frikandel special. The troublesome trio arrives safely nonetheless. Martin, turning into an emperor's son overnight, has to give a speech.
I'll do my best, but this is all new to me.
Paul thought he did alright, but he was lacking a bit of that flair that can generally not be taught. With Martin now safe at Cloud Ruler Temple, there is a fighting chance. But to truly restore the barrier between Oblivion and Tamriel, they needed to get the Amulet of Kings back from the Mythic Dawn. To this end, Paul is sent back to the Imperial City. Here, he meets up with Boris, the Emperor's former bodyguard who has since been put on a performance improvement plan. Together, they cook up a plan to infiltrate the Mythic Dawn itself. The only way to do this is by familiarizing yourself with the teachings of the Mythic Dawn, which are only available in 4 overpriced books. The last book in the series can only be directly obtained via a sponsor from within the cult. The Mythic Dawn was the first organization to engage in multi-level marketing. Paul respected the hustle. In the quest for those books, Paul comes across an initiate who has set up a meeting with just such a sponsor. So he and Boris infiltrate the meeting, using the power of diplomacy to keep their cover intact. With all the books now in their possession, the answer can be found in looking at the first letter of all chapters in order. The solution is as follows. This had turned into a fun treasure hunt, leaving Paul to surmise that the only real difference between the Mythic Dawn and Boy Scouts is regicide. Paul now knew where to find the Mythic Dawn, and when prompted to forfeit all mortal possessions in exchange for joining the cult at the lowest level, he immediately got on board. It was here that Paul was introduced to Mankar Cameron, the leader of the Mythic Dawn. He reveals that with the power of the Amulet of Kings, the Daedric Prince of Destruction Maewyn's Dagon will soon return to Tamriel.
Hear now the words of Lord Dagon.
What's up, y'all? With the power of the Amulet of Kings, I'll soon return to Tamriel.
So saith Dagon, praise be.
He then uses the amulet and the Mysterium Xarxes to open up a portal to paradise. The Mysterium Xarxes is a book written by Mehrunes Dagon himself, and Paul found it pretty boring. The fuck is this? The rest of the cult didn't take too kindly to him perusing where he shouldn't, which set in motion events that resulted in a sharp decline in members for the cult. So the end score was that the Amulet of Kings was no longer in Tamriel, but at least Paul acquired a book he couldn't decipher. With the Mysterium Xarxes in his possession, Paul went back to Cloud Ruler Temple and showed the tome to Martin, who was pretty chill about it.
By the nine, such a thing is dangerous even to handle.
Martin dabbled in Daedric magics in the past, and he is very familiar with the allures and perils of these things. As such, he knows that the Mysterium Xarxes can be used to open a portal to Menkar's paradise. This is the only way to get the Amulet of Kings back. In the meantime, Joffrey has heard reports of spies in Bruma, the nearest city to Cloud Ruler Temple. When Paul investigates, he finds out that the Mythic Dawn is planning to open a great Oblivion gate near Bruma. If this gate was to be opened, the consequences would be dire, but it sounded like a lot of work, so Paul decided it was a future him problem. Meanwhile, Martin made progress on deciphering the Mysterium Xarxes and opening a portal to paradise. The ritual to open that portal consists of 4 components. The first part requires a Daedric artifact. Martin sends Paul to the Shrine of Azura, one of the few Daedric princes not considered inherently evil. When Paul is granted an audience with the Lady of Darkness, she tells a mournful story of a group of devout followers turned vampires, and at Azura's behest, Paul sets off to put them out of their misery, as Azura knew of Paul's past dealings with the dead. Unfortunately, he contracted vampirism from this deed. For his service, Paul was rewarded with Azura's favor, earning him the Daedric artifact Azura's Star in the process. He was more than happy to relinquish this to Martin, as enchanting is for nerds. With the first part of the ritual now in motion, Martin would need some time to decipher the next part of the book. During all this commotion, a smaller Oblivion gate has opened near Bruma, in an attempt to whittle down the city's defenses for when the Mythic Dawn launches its full-scale attack. This was the perfect opportunity for Paul to teach the Bruma Guard on how to close these Oblivion gates, which basically comes down to pressing E at the Sigil Stone. The fact that they need instructions for this is the only proof you'll need that Bruma is mainly a Nord village. With relative safety returning to Bruma, Martin has figured out the next part of the Mysterium Xarxes. In order for the ritual to continue, they'll need to harvest the blood of a god. This has Martin stumped, but Joffrey knows where the final resting place of Tiber Septim is. Tiber Septim was born a man, but ascended to godhood later in life. His burial site is called Senkator. Unfortunately, this place is hella cursed, and no one has lived to tell the tale of their visit. So Paul and his team of paralegals set off to lift the curse, put in place by a former servant of Tiber Septim, who rose from the dead just to curse his final resting place, preventing anyone from honoring him. This bitch was petty as hell. Paul succeeds in lifting the curse and immediately steals Tiber Septim's armor.
My progress on the Mysterium Xarxes is slow, I'm afraid. How goes your search for the armor of Tiber Septim?
And suddenly, Paul realized why Martin had been so slow to decipher the book. With 2 out of 4 components collected, Martin has figured out the next part of the puzzle, a Great Welkin Stone. These stones were a great source of power used by the Aelids, a now extinct race of Daedra-worshipping elves who once ruled over Cyrodiil. 1 Great Welkin Stone remains in the last rune of Miscarcant. Unfortunately, this place is hella cursed, and no one has lived to tell the tale of their visit, so Paul and his team of paralegals set off to lift the curse, and in the depths of Miscarcant, Paul uncovers the last known Great Welkin Stone. Back in Cloud Ruler Temple, Martin has finally figured it out. Just as one step of the ritual required Daedra blood and its counterpart Aedra blood, the next step calls for the counterpart of a Welkin Stone. The ritual, it seems, is seeped in concepts that are inseparable from one another, like heat and cold, or life and death, or Sean Bean and not surviving till the end credits. The problem is that this Great Sigil Stone can only be obtained from a Great Oblivion Gate, so the only thing left to do for our heroes is to let the Mythic Dawn proceed with their plan to open one in Bruma. The Countess of Bruma is immediately on board. Can we open up a Great Oblivion Gate in your backyard?
No.
Please?
Okay.
Martin, having been the Emperor candidate for a grand total of 2 hours, steps up to the plate and leads the charge. The plan is to hold the Daedra in the open field until the Great Gate is opened, after which Paul will have a finite number of minutes to close it. Luckily, Paul spent so much time on running errands and fetch quests, his acrobatic skills improved beyond the point of needing stairs. My meniscus! His time being the savior of Cyrodiil hardened him, and he easily survives anything the Daedra throw at him. After an arduous journey, Paul reaches the top of the tower and yanks the Great Sigil Stone from its socket. Back in Tamriel, he is greeted with a hero's welcome. Whoa. Everything is now in place for a portal to open to Menkar's paradise.
We have only one chance at this.
The urgency was understood, so Paul decided that this was his last chance to do some side quests. He then made his way to paradise. Here, we find Mythic Dawn ascendants who figured out that immortality and eternal life kinda suck, especially when you're at the mercy of a cult who literally worship the god of destruction.
As the Master promised, we are now immortal, but our life here is a nightmare. When they kill us, we are soon reborn and the cycle begins again.
So kinda like Dark Souls. Exactly like Dark Souls. Paul could hear Menkar Cameron's disembodied voice in his head.
Periite's quagmire.
He also lore dumps while Paul tries to make his way to him. Because of this, he learns that Tamriel itself was actually Mehrunes Dagon's original plane of Oblivion.
Yes. Tamriel is just one more Daedric realm of Oblivion.
What the hell? Oh my god, no way.
Menkar's thesis: how can he invade what is originally his home? Menkar argues that Daedra are more powerful, as they actually manifest themselves into the world, but Daedra are just concepts that care for nothing and influence even less. Paul disagreed with that statement, because the gods literally saved him from succumbing to vampire STDs earlier in his adventure. What followed was a showdown between these two paradigms. Paul and his team of paralegals make short work of Cameron and his children, and the battle is a bit more climactic in the remaster.
Still a worthy foe at last.
Paul yoinks Cameron's robes, staff and the Amulet of Kings. Since the Amulet of Kings was the only thing keeping this place stable, Paul is teleported back to Tamriel. With no time left to lose, Paul and Martin race to the Imperial City. It's time to coronate Martin and relight the Dragonfires. This would restore the barrier between Oblivion and Tamriel, but they arrived just a smidge too late, and Mehrunes Dagon himself invaded the Imperial City in his true form.
Lighting the Dragonfires will no longer save us. The barriers that protected us from Oblivion are gone. I have an idea, one last hope. I must reach the Dragonfires in the Temple of the Wand. I'll need your help. I have to get past Mehrunes Dagon somehow.
Paul understood immediately what he had to do to make this happen, and distracted Mehrunes Dagon by electrifying his humongous testicles. This bought Martin enough time to get to the Temple of the One, and he uses the power of the Amulet of Kings to do this.
You've been a good friend in the short time that I've known you. But now I must go. The dragon waits.
It's heavily implied that Martin does not survive this encounter.
Do you mean I don't survive the trail?
Well, you put up a good fight and all, but...
But I thought I survived this.
Yeah, I know, but it's quite ambiguous as to...
Well, I guess I don't. I guess they're just going to get somebody else in to do the next one, so...
Yeah, you can always just
try to be as truthful as you are in filming.
Oh my god, Sean Bean, can you stop interrupting? And that's how Martin Septon used the magic in the Amulet of Kings to invoke the spirit of the dragon and defeat Mehrunes Dagon. And with one last look at Paul, he leaves this mortal realm, knowing the fate of the world is in good hands with him.
What happened? Where's Martin? It leaves the Empire without an emperor. As the Chancellor of the Elder Council, my concern now is how to choose his successor.
Luckily, Paul knew someone who was very willing and able to fill in this vacancy. And that's how Paul Goodman became the new emperor. The first thing he did was increase the fines for necrophilia and his law practice never saw more profit, which was his only goal all along. Thanks for making it to the end. It means a lot to me that you got this far, and if you did, let me know by commenting that Paul Goodman is your favorite lawyer. And if you want to watch more nonsense, why not check out my story recap of Kingdom Come Deliverance 1, or something else that the algorithm decided was the best option.